And tonight I will talk to you about Iceland. This is Day. He is an Icelandic fan. I interviewed him and did lots of research so that I could talk to you tonight about his homeland. Tonight I will talk to you about Iceland's origins, its government, economy, and its landscape. So first, I'll talk about its origins. Iceland's population originates from Norway. Back in the days of the Vikings, whenever Norway would banish people from their country, mostly criminals, they would make them sail out west, because they believed that if you sailed out west for long enough, you would fall off the face of the earth. In reality, you would land on Iceland, which really isn't much better. And in 1944, Iceland officially became a country. Now that you know Iceland's origins, I will talk to you about its government. Iceland is a form of socialism, which means that all the taxpayer dollars goes towards things like public education, public health care, and things that generally help the population. They're not technically a part of the European Union, but they do have trade treaties as if they would. They have three main political parties in their government system. They have the Farmers' Party, the Left Green, and the Socialist Party, who all serve in the Althing, which is like Iceland's form of Congress. In the Althing, they have a Prime Minister and a President. The Prime Minister is the one who holds all the power, and the President is just a public figurehead, much like that of the Queen of England, who doesn't really have any power. Iceland also has a national religion, which is Protestant Christian, and this religion is taught in the schools, and the churches are funded by the state. Now that you know about Iceland's economy, or now that you know about Iceland's government, I'll talk to you about its economy. Iceland has a population of 300,000, and according to Robert Boys, who wrote Meltdown Iceland, they have the highest GDP per capita in the world. Their two main revenues come from fishing and tourism. Their four biggest fishing exports are cod, haddock, pollock, and mackerel. Mackerel is a more recent export that they have because due to global warming and the oceans getting warmer, the mackerel are forced to swim up north into Iceland's fishing grounds. Iceland owns most of Europe's fishing grounds, and they also supply Europe with most of its fish. They are also one of two countries in the world who hunt whale, and they hunt the minke whale. The other big revenue comes from tourism. One of the main attractions for tourists is their alcohol. They told me that there's one alcohol in specific called Brennivin, which is between 65 and 80% alcohol content per volume. And Dave, who worked in the tourism industry last summer, told me that in 2013, over 800,000 people visited Iceland, and in 2014, over 1 million people visited. Their banking system is owned by the state, and in 2008, they had an economic collapse. According to Andrew Johnson, who wrote Why Iceland, people lined up for hours before the bank opened in an attempt to try to salvage their money. And I think it's an interesting fact that in 2008, it was a practically bankrupt nation, but now they have the highest GDP per capita in the world. And now that you know about Iceland's economy, I will talk to you about their landscape. Their landscape is, as they put it, the moon with water. And NASA agreed with that. According to Robert Dunbar, who wrote an article for NASA about the training of the astronauts, NASA used Iceland and other Nordic countries to prepare the astronauts for what the landscape of the moon would be like. 7 of the 12 astronauts who have walked on the moon have also walked on Iceland. This landscape consists of lots of mountains, fjords, and volcanoes. And in case you didn't know, a fjord is a valley that is carved out by glaciers. Lots of TV shows and movies have been filmed in Iceland. One of the more recent and more famous ones is the ice wall in the TV show Game of Thrones. The weather is much like that of Alaska. It's very cold, very windy, and they have the Aurora Borealis, and during the summertime, they only have 2 hours of darkness, and during the wintertime, they only have 2 hours of light. However, they told me that the 2 hours of darkness during the summer isn't really darkness, it's just less light. And during the wintertime, when it's 2 hours of light, it's not really sunlight, it's just kind of a gray light. They also have lots of different animals in Iceland. I've already told you about much of their fish. But I think one of the more interesting animals that they have is the reindeer, which actually isn't native to Iceland. It was imported from Norway, and it only lives on the eastern part of the island. So in conclusion, I've told you about Iceland's origins, its government, economy, and its landscape. So now maybe one day, 10 years down the road, you might think of planning a vacation on Iceland. And to end on a funny note, Day told me that the common idea that Greenland is icy and Iceland is very green is not true. Greenland is very green and Iceland is very icy.